on this computer. All right, we're going. Then what I'm going to do is do this. I think that's it. Oh, well, I'm so glad everybody came. Got a large group of people here we're going to be reading a transcript, which I've edited a little bit, a transcript from a communion practice, which we still do in AMS. But this is the communion practice with Gururaj himself. And it gives a little hint of the kind of things that went on with his communion practice. And I'm going to start out by, and first of all, I hope everybody got a copy. I know we send out announcements and then reminders, but I think everybody on one of the emails that you got should have a copy of my edited transcript, lightly edited transcript. So I hope everybody got a copy of that. And I'm going to read a little bit at the beginning. That a high point of our retreats with Gururaj, back when we were with him in the body, as we like to say, was communion. And then, as now, it was one day a week where we all got together. We would take a shower, we'd take a bath, we would be quite solemn, and we'd come in and we'd just sit down. And Gururaj would come out in probably one of his better Gururaj suits. It's a little white, usually his white Gururaj suit. And as I remember it, he was always kidding and always joking, but maybe he was more serious, I don't know, but he always loves to kid, but it was a very formal occasion. What happens during communion, he describes himself briefly below in the body of the satsang. And to prepare for practice, as I said, then as now, we were supposed to show up in a little bit of a formal frame of mind, a little bit of a somber frame of mind. And we were supposed to show up more or less ready to undergo something kind of significant. So we put on our best clothes and we would gather together in a quiet and serious attitude. And Gururaj would join us. And now I can't remember after all this length of time if he was there or if he came out and joined us. I can't quite remember how that worked. In any case, he normally, when he would enter the room, Vidya and or Rupa would be with him. And he would go up and he would sit down and they would fiddle with him to try to hook him up with a mic and all that. And he would sometimes kid us and this and that. But I remember in communion, I'm just off script here, he would very quickly go into a pretty deep meditation. And he didn't often meditate in front of us, but he would go into a meditation. And this was after sort of explaining what was going to happen. Normally, as part of communion, he would go into a meditation. They would last 15, 20 minutes, as I remember. Maybe they were longer. Then afterwards, we'd come out of communion and we would do Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. When I just remember that I'm supposed to do Guru Shakti. So let me finish up with this and then try to remember to do Guru Shakti. He would come out of it. He would often, at the very end of it, when he come out of meditation, he would do some mysterious things with his hand. And I was kidding someone about this. He would often take his hands and move them very slowly around the room. And often he would look slowly around the room. And people would catch his eye or not. It was very mysterious. I used to see things in his hands. He would move them. This is not just Gururaj. This is a practice that other great spiritual masters do. It's an Indian thing. And I also suspect that it's part of many spiritual traditions that deal with real, not just religious beliefs, but real spiritual experiences. I suspect that Christ did it with his disciples, and that what we get with our contemporary Catholic communion services and the bestowing, apostolic bestowing, of graces, blessings, and all that is a bestowal of spiritual energy, a transmission of spiritual energy, perhaps from the Christ himself, if you're a believing Catholic. In any case, many Indian traditions do it. And as I said, I suspect many other spiritual traditions in the world do communion or a version of communion. So he would often bestow this blessing. Then after a time, the atmosphere would change, and he would actually ask us to stand up and tell any kind of experiences we have. And this is a little bit of a joke in AMS. So you'll hear some old timers say, so how many people had an experience? How many raise your hand? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Often nobody would raise their hand. And you know, yes, yes, just about everybody in the room. That was a standing joke in AMS. And in fact, at communion service, I never talked with other people. As I remember, sometimes things would happen, sometimes they don't. In our communion services now, sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. My personal opinion about what goes on in communion, I think there is, well, I'll say not my opinion, my experience is a tremendous feeling, very hard to describe, would fill the room and when he would begin to meditate. And some of you have experienced this yourself. I once brought this up with one of my teachers here, who's from an elaborate Buddhist tradition. This was, one of my teachers in Philadelphia, and he knew what I was talking about. And this was with Chogyam Trungpa. And the term they used it was for the heavy dids. The heavy dids. And in fact, I remember this strong feeling of like a descent of grace or power into the room. We called it Shakti in those days. And we talk about some people have good Shakti meters and other people didn't feel much at all. And we still have Shakti going on in our groups. But it was very powerful on these communion nights. So before we start in with the satsang himself, and then we'll talk about this a little bit at the end, let's do a little bit of formal Guru Shakti. And today I actually have I brought a picture of Laureate, one of Laureate's pictures of the great master right there. So I'm going to be usually I just visualize him, but I'm going to be looking at his picture, the way we were taught to do it. So let's do a little bit of formal Guru Shakti, and then I'll bring us out with his Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, 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 Om Shanti, Shanti Deva Shanti, Shanti Deva Shanti, Shanti, peace, 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 divine peace. Well, I'm thinking about it right now. I read once that the very great Hindu mystic, Ramana Maharshi, Uh, he did darshan, and that was a term I should mention. Darshan means to be in the presence of a divine personage or a divine representation. It could be, you can do darshan in a holy place to a holy image of some divine figure, either a great guru or a divinity. Anyway, they would do darshan with Ramana Maharshi pretty much all day. He would read the newspapers and talk with devotees, and all day and he would be sitting in his little cot in the middle of that wonderful little grass open place. I've never visited. I would love to visit it. That is, a lot of you guys have got to visit Arunachala. That's the name of the sacred mountain that he lived in, a little ashram in the foothills of this sacred mountain. Anyway, every day about 4 o'clock, several people recorded images. Suddenly he would go into samadhi, the way our guru did during communion, and everything would fill with that heaviness. It would fill with that energy or that presence. And a number of people have written accounts of that presence. And other spiritual masters have too. It's wonderful to read it. So I'm going to go into reading the transcript of our wonderful guru. As usual, I've edited a little bit for clarity and coherence. I've cut out some of the goofing around a little bit. Sorry, you can still get a hold of the original transcript if you want, but I didn't take out that much, but I did take out some of the stranger things he would say or do, because eventually I want to publish these things, and it just, they aren't going to translate. So much of stuff that happened in communion was totally uncanny, not like ordinary life at all. And it's the kind of thing you say, oh, I believe in that. But when it actually is going on, you're saying, what the heck is happening? This is weird. And you can't quite believe it. All right? But let me read it. So this is Gururaj talking about the communion practice. Now, for those of you that have come here for the first time on a course, let me just give you a few words of explanation. This is Gururaj. Most of you that have been around me for 10 or 12 years know all about it. In the communion practice, what happens is that I merge away into divinity, and I become one with him. I'm going to give you a special practice of not only knowing of him, but also of her, the manifester and the manifestation. I don't want to tell you more. You'll experience this yourself. So some of you are familiar with this. He's talking about the manifester and the manifestation, but they are in a way the same. AKA, they're also referred as Shiva and Shakti, or even Shiva and Parvati. And they're a metaphor for the divine, the underlying spiritual isness of all reality, and then its expression through us, through form. And one of our goals to experience divinity is to experience all of this manifestation as divine. So he'll talk about that. Gururaj, the intangible God in his tangible form is the greatest blessing that you could ever receive. For what is the meaning of blessing? Blessed am I, my beloved Lord, for receiving me. That is blessing. And if any one of you were to say to me, bless you, my Gururaj, what could you mean by that? Who are you to bless me? Have you got that divine force and that power to bless him who is so powerful? And in his humility, he who remains totally powerful? It's divinity or Siva. When I merge away into that divinity, I go through the entire existence of the created universe. I see solar systems and the planets and the galaxies, and in the pulsations of the solar systems and galaxies, I become one with the pulsation of the entirety of creation. You travel on, and you see all the beauty around you, the scintillating glory of all creation. And then you go beyond it all. What does he mean by the pulsation of the entirety of creation? The way the Indians conceive of it, everything is vibration. There's even a science of it called spanda. in Hindu metaphysics. Everything is vibrations. And in fact, it's the way that our physicists describe ultimately the nature of energy. It's just frequencies of energy. It's just pulsations. So the pulsation of the entirety of creation, everything existing is simply vibrations. Gururaj, you merge away in the beauty which was never created at all. For creation requires mind power to make creation possible. But when you go beyond mind power, then creation ceases. All creations are only creations of the mind that exists within thee, my beloveds. Reality goes beyond creation because the very word creation involves mind power. Thought forces produce the creations that all of you are being. But to go beyond that thought force, you merge away into the divinity, which is non-possessed of any thought force. If divinity could involve itself in thought processes, it would become limited, because all thought processes are nothing else but limitations. To reach that which is limitless, and to merge away in that beautiful beauty of that which is limitlessness, that is self-realization. That is realizing the reality that exists forever within thee, my beloveds. So we move on, step by step and one step at a time. That's enough, I don't mind, until you reach that final step, which is stepless, and you merge away into that total beauty of reality. The experience of the divine does not involve the mind or thought processes. You do not think. Any of you that have meditated for some time will realize that which is aware of what's going on is not thinking. It isn't thought, and it does not exist in time. When you finally realize, oh, my gosh, something is conceiving of, is thinking of, is perceiving out there. What is that that's perceiving? What is that that's where the source for all those thoughts? It's divinity. When you fully become established in that, you're self-realized. And you're free of thoughts. So you're talking about creation. Creation, in a sense, are all thoughts. Everything that's created is just a kind of thought. You think, what about Jupiter? What about rocks? What about trees? They're also just thought forms. They occur to you. They don't occur to bugs, for example, or birds or other conscious sentient beings. So other sentient beings don't see Saturn. You think you do because somebody told you you're looking at the planet Saturn. It's just thought forms. Whatever you think now to be real is not real at all. It's your imagination that makes you think that all this around you. Just what I said. I want you to go further and further and further and enjoy the totality of reality. Then you, children of mine, will merge into me. It might be a long way to go, perhaps. It depends upon what kind of machine you use to get there. It depends upon you. You can take the slow boat to China. Note to you, Buzz. Slow boat to China or the fast jet. But realize one thing for sure. You are all children of divinity. You are born of infinity. You are God itself. You and your Father are one. Come to this realization and stop fucking up your lives, will you? Have the thought in your heart forever that I and my Father are one and always together. Then where is the separation? See, I've improved upon your Bibles. For who created the first Bible? I'll give you a guess. Gururaj at this point is speaking from the level of being identified with Siva, identified with God. Hard for us to conceive of. But he said he merges away from divinity, merged away into divinity. And he said, actually, we're also merged away in divinity, but we do not know it. We think it, we may believe it, but that's not the same thing as being it. So, you and your Father are one. He's speaking from the point of unity consciousness. He's actually speaking, he is God at that point, because that's the level he realizes that he's become the source. Tonight, Gururaj goes on, tonight we've journeyed very far. If you've had any perceptions, if you've gone through the entire universe and traveled with me through the scintillating stars, scintillating carbuncle nebulae. I looked up what carbuncle, it's kind of jewel. Scintillating carbuncle nebulae. And what this means is twinkle, twinkle, little star. What it really means is this. Why make your lives complicated in your carbuncle nebulae? Look at that little star in the sky. Go twinkle and twinkle, twinkle. Just look up in that sky and say, twinkle, twinkle, little star. For if you are there, I am there too in your twinkling. Your twinkling lies within my heart. Your twinkling is there, which makes my heart twinkle in the love and the loving that I have for you. So twinkle, little star, never mind how far you are, for I know for sure within myself that there is no space, there's no time, and there's no distance. And within that one very moment, I'm there with you and twinkling inside you. What does it mean to be in unity consciousness? One with the divine, one with your real nature. Great Zen master, Suzuki Roshi, the one who wrote A Beginner's Mind, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He wrote that when you begin to understand this, he said, first you're hearing the little birds singing out in the trees. He said, all of a sudden you realize they're singing within your heart. They're not apart, they're not separate from you. They're singing in your heart. That's what he's talking about. The twinkling lies within my heart. There's no, you and the stars, you're all happening within divinity. It's just your misconception that you think the little twinkly star's up there and you're here. Everything's there. So then he beckons. It's actually, he beckons to Rupa. Come here, my daughter. My darling, you've been crying. You have to understand that these are very emotional. I mean, I'm crying a little bit now, but the communion, you would just be whacked. It would be so strange. You know, this was after his meditation, his little talk after the meditation. And on a strong one, you wouldn't know what would be going on. It was just very weird. And Rupa certainly felt this. Come here, my daughter. My daughter, you've been crying. God bless you, for you've to some extent realized the eternal truths that I'm telling you about. Remember one thing, my beloved, the tears must never be painful. Add ecstasy in your tears to make it joyful. That's how it works. That's the secret of life. I love you all so, so much. Just love and love and love. Why would I question the meaning of why I should love all of you? In the very act of questioning the meaning of why would detract from the beauty of that love. Love doesn't require definition. It just is. So I can tell this beloved daughter of mine, don't ask me why. All I can truly say is, I love thee, blessed one. Lovely. You know it. Divinity loves us without reservations, no matter what we do. We can be awful people. Divinity loves us completely. The universe loves us completely. Even when we're suffering, as he said, your tears shouldn't be filled, let's see, Your tears mustn't be painful. They should be filled with ecstasy. That means in your suffering, in your pain, in your anger, in your disappointments, underneath that is this joy of isness. And Gururaj is embodying that. I mean, literally embodying this. By the way, in the Tibetan tradition, which I've studied a lot, there is one of the practices is the Rinpoche, the high level Rinpoche. They say Rinpoche is now turning into, they would turn into Vajrasattva, or they would become one of their deities. And they would be meditating, but they would actually visualize themselves in the form of that deity so strongly that they became that deity. And that's absolutely, forgive me, the Christians out there, but that's absolutely what Jesus meant when he said, my Father and I are one. He became the Father. Do you remember that? There's that wonderful vision where two of his disciples saw Christ transfigured on the mountain, and Christ was there with Elijah on one side, with somebody else, I forgot, on the other, and Christ had become transfigured. He'd become divinity itself in the experience of his chelas. Gururaj always experienced his unity with divinity. We just don't do it, but he often did. I've given you some very deep secrets of life during our satsangs. Now think about them. Listen to these recordings again and again, because in their first grasping, it can become a bit of a rasping. But as you go deeper in listening to your beloved's words, the rasping disappears, and there comes a grasping that was produced through millions and millions of years. So please help me, my beloved ones, to love you more and more and more and forevermore. For my love for you will forever remain endless, because it was beginless. Realize these truths and you'll find life becoming so happy. And in that happiness, you'll find the kind of joy that produces nothing other than joyfulness. Isn't that simple? Well, I was just saying, there's no beginning to this kind of love. There's no end to it. There's no need, there's no cause. You didn't do anything to make the love happen. It's always here. You open yourself to it. It never began. That's where he said it becomes a grasping that was produced through millions and millions of years. Okay, that's I think what he means by that is your yearning. Your journey towards divinity has been going on for millions of years. All right, you're finding your way back to the source. After tonight's merging away, if there are any experiences that you've had, tell me, and I'll explain to you what they mean. So whoever wants to start, just start it off. Doesn't matter who starts at all, because I'm going to give you your starting, the greatest start. It says in others, you're starting to understand this. He's going to give you the real thing. So the first chela, I forgot who this was who asked this. Beloved Guruji, in my experience, I usually see you disappearing. And this time I saw your features disappear, and then you look just like me. I saw me when I saw you. Can you explain that? Gururaj, I think that was Meryl. Gururaj, it's a very simple explanation. It means that although I have a different form from you, in the spirit's welling up, we merged together and found no separation at all, only the oneness of that one spirit that dwells within me and thee, all the time and forever together. Remember this for sure. Your appearances do not matter at all, because appearances change all the time. You appear, disappear, and reappear. But when the spirits find, what does he mean by that? I think we're under the illusion that we're the same person today that we were yesterday. We aren't. We have different thoughts. Our bodies have changed. Our relationships have changed. Our circumstances have changed. We're not the same person, but we maintain that illusion. We're not the same person from moment to moment. We're a shifting web of appearances and relationships with other things. You're in a pretty good mood, then you come out as I did this morning and find your tire has gone flat. Oh, you call a tow truck. Oh, okay, good. Tow truck comes and this happens. They punch a hole in your oil pan and you get oil all over your driveway. Everything changes. Everything changes. The world is never the same. So you appear and you disappear all the time. You go to sleep at night, you disappear, and then you come back in the morning. What doesn't change? God's love never changes. It's changeless. It is existence. The fact that we show up is God's love. When your spirits find that union together, you and divinity identify with one another. And when the spirits can merge, there's no separation. For in that mergence, you find the emergence of the beatitude of yourself, and you become consumed in that fire of love that always will exist between you and me. By the way, in the Tibetan tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, they say you're self-realized when you and the Guru's mind are the same. You become merged with the Guru. What he's talking about here. The Guru is that bridge between us and our own divinity. Another Chela. Gururaj, I saw a beautiful lilac color in your throat area. This chakra right here. I saw a beautiful lilac color in your throat area and in your heart and all around your beads. And it would sweep towards me, and then it would start again, and then it would almost a circular motion. It was almost as if it came in waves of heat, and then it would start all over again. By the way, everybody in the room, some people would have absolutely nothing, I guess. Other people are having very different experiences. So I was always so surprised to have somebody stand up and describe these things. It's, what the heck? Or, gee, I'd like something like that. Or it's just different. Gururaj says. By the way, he always had an explanation. I remember a little kid once asked, he said, Gururaj, I saw you turn into a big alligator. And he said, yes. He says, yes, I became the big alligator that ate all the little minnows. You know, he never denied anybody's experience. He always affirmed your experience. Because guess what? You're functioning on a level during communion where you're having visionary experiences. And who's to deny these visions? There are different kinds of experience of miraculous stuff. The heat you felt within yourself is a consummation of the love that dwells within thee, my darling. And the mind functions in various forms. The mind can interpret itself in words, in symbols, colors. So while I was in communion, you saw deep, 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 somewhere in your mind, the beautiful lilac which shows the purity of your mind. I thank you. Gururaj, I think an ordinary person, sort of pretending to be a girl, would have said, yes, I am imitating, I was communicating to you through the chakras. And blah, blah, blah. He didn't. He said, you saw yourself. Catch that. He said, while I was communion, you saw deep, 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 somewhere in your mind, that beautiful lilac which shows you the purity of your mind. You experienced yourself on a deep level. The Guru's not separate from you, especially when during communion. He's unleashing these things within us. We're not seeing it out there. Or we do, because there's no difference. What's out there is in you. Otherwise, how would you know it was there? Another Chela. Beloved Guruji, I saw you get terribly old, like you were 80 or 90, the flesh falling away, very old. By the way, this particular one happened to me too. In fact, a lot of these things I've had at different times. Okay. Gururaj, beautiful, beautiful. The only thing is that I'm not 80 or 90, so you've missed out so many zeros behind it. In other words, he's ageless. You've missed so many zeros behind it. If you write a check with so many zeros, it will mean nothing unless you put the 1 or the 2 in front of it. That's very interesting, by the way. I read a lot into that. In other words, if you're 80 or 90, he said 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. The only way you make something concrete out of that is you have to put a number in the front of it, like 20 trillion. Okay. What does that mean? It means that in order to experience the divine or limitless bliss, we have to concretize it. We have to think it. We have to make a thing out of it, because the experience itself is beyond separation. So if we're beyond separation and we're in that infinity he's talking about, how are we going to experience these things? We only do it in retrospect when the mind is operating. So, my beloved, what can I tell you of myself? I mentioned before, beginless, endless. I have no age at all. For age is just a measurement of the mind. Do you understand that? But when you're merged in the spirit within thee, then where is the age? You are ageless because the spirit itself is ageless. That's a very good experience, dearest. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you came. This apparently was a first-time person to the course. I'm glad you come. It's so good to see you, really. A lot of people would show up to these things for the first time and have these very powerful experiences and just be blown out of the water. I had a very powerful experience my first course. Nothing like that ever happened subsequently, but it's very mysterious. You don't have to have been a long-term meditator to have had these types of things. In fact, I suspect that the longer you go like that, the fewer of these big bangs you do. But maybe that's just me. Okay? I don't tend to have big bangs like this anymore. All right. Gururaj Chela. So there was a silence. So he calls up somebody. He will do that. And people would go up and sit by him. Come, 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 my beloved. You have no question to ask me, but without your asking it, I'm going to answer it. The question in your mind revolves around your emotions, right? Now, what the bloody hell are we going to do about that? When you have any emotion that is disturbing you, go to the bathroom and have a motion. Typical Gururaj. Go to the bathroom and let me read that again. Now, what the bloody hell are we going to do about it? When you have any emotion that's disturbing you, you go to the bathroom and have a motion. And just shut it off. For that must never, ever trouble you. Never, ever. As long as you have the kindness, the blessings of our Lord, wherever the hell he might be, I don't know. But I know he exists within me. When you have that, why be involved with emotions? Emotions have so many byparts. They have feelings and hurts. That's okay. I can carry on and on and on. You and I, beloved, we are not going to suffer any pains of any emotions at all. Remember that every emotion is created by yourself, by your thinking. So, fuck the mind. This is a great one. Fuck the mind. If that's possible at all, I don't know. Few of us realize that, especially for me, late at night, I have less control over things sometimes. Late at night, I can't sleep, and I get worried about stuff. I get upset about stuff. And you have the repetitive thoughts, about this happened. Oh, well, what about this? Or this keeps happening. You keep remembering something. You can drop that. In fact, that's what we're trying to do as meditators, learn how to just drop it. Fuck the mind. It's just stories and upsets and nonsense. It doesn't help to worry about these things. We all know these things. But you can develop the power to drop it. One of the strongest ways how you can drop troubling emotions, Guru Shakti. Think about the divine. Think about your Guru. And if you have any kind of strength of faith in the Guru or awareness or direct experience of the Guru, you can drop these emotions. You can become detached from these troubling emotions. I love what he says that. You're not going to, he says, I will carry on and on and on. You and I, beloved, are not going to suffer any pains or pains of any emotion at all. Because remember, every emotion is created by yourself, by your thinking. So fuck the mind. If that's possible at all, I don't know. I love you, my darling. I love you so, so much. And there is nothing to worry about in this life. Worry is just a mental creation. Worry has a great blood brother. Because when you worry about something, you're mixing yourself up in your worry. But your blood brother is forever there to lift the burden away and make you feel worry-free forever and ever. Your tears, my beloved, become my tears. I feel them all very deeply. God bless you, my beloved daughter. God bless you. This again makes me think a lot about the Christ. I mean, that sense of Christ taking on the sufferings of others, taking on their hurts and their sufferings. That's the blood brother. He calls it a blood brother. So in your worrying, you're sitting here very upset and nothing like that. Remember, you have a blood brother. All right? He's going to make you worry-free forever and ever. I don't know about you guys, but Guru Shakti was, I remember, made a big part of my practices. In a sense, it's all of spiritual practices. Meditation is just a way of getting deeper in touch with Guru Shakti. What's Guru Shakti? Becoming aware of your own divinity. Becoming aware of the divine. Always being aware of the divine. Shayla, Bapaji, when I was watching you, you changed into an amorphous blob, but now the top of my head feels just weird and somewhat numb. And I think you blew my mind. I think this is a Shayla named Danusha saying this. She says Bapaji, which is a cute Indian, means father. Bapaji, an affectionate form of father. Bapaji, when I was watching you, you changed into an amorphous blob, but now the top of my head just feels weird and somewhat numb. And I think you blew my mind. Gururaj replies, how can I blow your mind when it's blown already? Who releases divinity within us? We make the realization. The Guru may do something. The Guru is not doing it to us. The divinity that we are is doing it to us. The Guru is not doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. How can I blow your mind when it's blown already? Now, when the mind is blown, what do you do about it? That is the $60,000 question. We can start by saying, my mind is blown. Like, what the heck has happened to me? This is so weird. And then I'd start analyzing, why is my mind blown? These thoughts and emotions also have a connection far lower down. Now, if you take yourself away from the emotions that revolve in other areas lower down, and you lift them up into the emotion of devotion, of divinity, then you'll be blowing away that stinking fart, that stinking wind away from your mind. But then you will be dwelling in the divine. That's how it works. You're upset about something, do the meditation on it. What am I really upset about? Oh, I'm just really scared that I'm going to end up broken alone. Let's just pretend I'm scared about it. Oh, I'm just broke. Oh, and then you recall, but you know what? The Lord is with me, never apart from me for a moment. How could I ever be alone? How could I ever be abandoned? God is with me, always with me. He's omnipresent now, even though I may not always be aware of it. Omnipresent. And then Gururaj says here, lift them up into the emotion of devotion, of divinity. Then you'll be blowing away that stinking fart, that stinking wind away from your mind. Then you'll be dwelling in the divine. That's how it works. Another Chela. Tonight I kept hearing the Om sound that had been playing before. We used to always start out these communion services. We still do, I think, at AMS. They play the Om tape. Oh, do you remember that? So this person kept hearing the Om sound, even though the tape wasn't going. Tonight I kept hearing the Om sound that had been playing before. And I thought the tape was still playing until I realized that it wasn't. And then it was this very low sound that just went on and on. went out, 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 out. Some of you who are really into yogic practices will recognize that that's actually a very deep yogic experience. You hear the cosmic Om. There's a name for it, I forgot what it is. Gururaj says, beautiful experience. What you have heard is the anhata sound, which means the soundless sound. Anhata is the anhata, the heart chakra. And it means, the heart chakra, anhata chakra, means the unstruck, like a bell that has not been struck. That's what Gururaj is referring to. I'll read it again. What you have heard is the anhata sound, which means the soundless sound. What you have heard is just the verbal, I think he meant oral, hearing, just the verbal representation of it. He might have meant verbal because it's a mantra. Okay, maybe he did mean. What you have just heard was the verbal representation of it. He did mean verbal, it's a mantra. Remember this and remember it well. That what you have heard is the anhat, the soundless sound, which is your true being. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. God bless you. Remember, he said that our mantra is really us in our subtlest form, in our vibrational form. That's what our personalized mantras actually represent. They're us in our divine nature, not in our ordinary consciousness. Beloved Priyatam, another Chela, at the beginning, waves of darkness were going into you. And then at the same time, you were glowing, and your face would change shapes, and between each change, it would go back to your face. And each change, you became brighter and brighter, and that just continued. I've forgotten who this was who said this. Gururaj, what a wonderful experience you had. Let me explain to you the meaning. Within the realms of relativity, there will be light and there will be dark. And yet both of them, light and darkness, only reflect themselves upon each other. How can darkness ever exist without there being any light? And how can light exist without there being any darkness? How can this light burn without casting a shadow? So even if we talk about Eastern mythologies, you would find Rama representing light, and you would find Kali representing darkness. And yet the two of them merge, creating something else. Someone once addressed a letter to me as Gururaj Ananda Yogi, Gray, Gray, Gururaj Ananda Yogi. So do you see how I combine within myself this light and dark, which is a combination of relativity and absolutivity? Absolutivity. This is a new word for your dictionary. My prayer for all of you, my beloveds, is this: combine them together. Don't function only in the light. That is too far beyond. It will come, but don't function entirely in darkness either. Combine them both, absoluteness and relativity, to form this beautiful gray. This is a crazy metaphor he's making up here. Okay? How to combine the absolute, the isness, and the relative, this ordinary life. Divinity in our so-called ordinary life. Haven't you seen it in the sky? The clouds of the gray have come about from that vast blueness with its own reflection, combined with water vapor rising, in order to show you the beauty of the water vapor and the blueness of the sky, becoming the combination of divinity. Remember one thing for sure, that guy which we call divinity is not far away. He's here and now. You might not even recognize him. Perhaps he might be sitting here, around here someplace. But surely someday you will. If I could lead you within your real self, this life of mine would be worthwhile. As the Chela worships the Guru too worships his Chela, always. And as I've said this before to you, the mutuality exists. Mutuality exists for the togetherness of relativity and absolutely, this mutuality exists For the togetherness of relativity and absolutivity is none else but mutuality. Find that. Thou art that. Brahmasmi. Thou art that. What thou art, that is. Find that. The absolute and relative. And try to remember a line. I like to quote the Gospels, and I think Gururaj is very aware of the Gospels. And I like to quote the Gospels because for many of us, especially in America, Christianity is the dominant religion. And for me personally, I think Gururaj would agree. Let's not keep it in an Indian context. This is part of everyone's spiritual tradition. I think there was a time when Jesus was asking his disciples, who am I? Who do you think I am? And I think one of the disciples said, you're the divine Lord. You and the Father. And as I remember, I can't remember the exact quote, Jesus just looked at him and didn't say yes or no, just said, don't tell anybody about this. Because you know what happens to people who say, who say I'm divinity. The other people say, you're not a God, and they'll kill you. They'll kill Christ. They'll throw you in jail, or they'll put you on antipsychotics or something like that. But it's the truth. We are divinity. We only don't know it. So you got to remember, this is, Gururaj was a funsta. So the evening would end with very solemnly, would begin very solemnly, end often really crazy. People giggling, laughing, and joking. He'd be telling crazy jokes. So he says, oh, it's so much fun being together. It's so much fun. Sharing my love with you, perhaps giving you some knowledge and some wisdom or whatever. But it's a sharing together with these beloveds of mine. Now, 10, 12, or 15 years ago, you never even knew that your Priyatam existed. But within that short period of time, you'll soon find the eternity of the eternal. And that in melting away, I in your heart, and you in mine, you'll find divinity. I promise you that. Priyatam is laid in his teaching here. I forgot how it came about, but people started calling him the Priyatam, the beloved one. All right, the beloved one. Within that short period of time, you'll soon find the eternity of the eternal. And in that melting away, I in my heart and you in mine, you'll find divinity. Something I very misunderstand, again, in the Bible, forgive me for bringing up the Bible so much, is when Jesus said, you obtain the Father only through me. And centuries people have said, well, if you're not a Christian, well, we'll either convert or we'll kill you. This went on for centuries. And he didn't mean it that way. He said, a guru is a guide, is darkness to light. The guru is the key for us to realize our own divinity. Guru, as Gururaj says, he can't do it for us. We have to do it. But he can be the guide. All right? So he says, and in our tradition with Gururaj, we use the mind, but we also primarily, he said, the anhat, we use the heart. So it said, you find the eternity of the eternal, and then in melting away, I in your heart, and you in mine, will find divinity. Remember earlier on, he was saying, the guru worships the chela just as much as the chela might worship the guru. It's a mutual exchange. God loves the soul. Almost, God loves the soul. That's the meaning of Krishna and Radha. God loves the soul. The soul is described as being incredibly beautiful, incredibly desirable. As much as we might crave divinity, divinity craves us. So that was a beautiful, and it's the kind of thing that for these things, a lot of times you have to be there. Maybe if you can find a tape of it and listen to it. Hopefully my reading of it, it's a little bit colder and more cleaned up, will help you get a little bit into the spirit of it. Or when you read some of these accounts of these great spiritual teachers, Christ or Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna, you can understand some of the spirit of communion that was taking place in the presence of these great, great teachers. So right now, it's just a little bit after 6, and I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to unmute everybody. We're all back.
Nice work.
Woo.
And I just went gallery view so I can see everybody.
I don't know if they can see.
I can see.
You can,
All right.
Here, you want to show that you're here. Just put your face on here. Oh.
Where's conversation?
There's 2 of us.
Anybody want to say something? Or their own communion experiences. If you've had communion experiences you don't mind sharing, share about them.
I got to say, just the unity of it, just that it's everything. It's just beautifully spoken of, I am you, you are me, I am the mouse, I am everything.
I'm the walrus.
Yeah, I am the walrus. But it's wonderful and profound and playful and smart. You know. So nicely spoken. Thank you.
He used to I remember sitting one time in communion and he got extremely luminous. And I was thinking, I just kept that, it's because I'm probably staring at him. And I figured it's just some weird optical illusion. So I'd look away and everybody else was just looking up what they were doing, stoned or whatever. And I'd look back and he would still be luminous. And it's just like, what? By the way, Marilyn Mataji, I don't think they would mind me telling. Mataji especially used to see him transfigured. So once after communion, she shared with me, she said she saw him in robes of light, the way Jesus appeared to Elijah and Peter and Elijah, not Peter and Paul, I forgot who it was, the 2 disciples that saw Jesus in the transfiguration. Mataji saw him that way. By the way, that's my Christian interpretation. Mataji was not into Christian symbolism. That was not her thing. Anybody else? Experiences also communion that people might have in communion, because we still do it at AMS.
Phil got here. Hello, Phil.
Yeah, Phil's here. By the way, you guys know, I keep talking about the Gospels today. If we do healings in AMS, if you guys have read the Gospels, you remember Christ made his first reputation as a healer, primarily, not a spiritual teacher, but a healer. Everybody needed, in ancient Palestine, there was no doctors, so he was very popular. But he said over and over again, without faith, there was no healing. So a lot of the healing, this kind of things are elicited by us. They come out of us.
And us is no different than at all.
Yeah, and it's very, yeah. Sometimes I'm more surprised that separation exists. I mean, we can even understand it in our own culture. You know, everything's atoms and molecules. Fine. Well, then how come people in cars and emotions and love affairs and divorces, how come all this happens if it's all just atoms and molecules? And why? You know, why doesn't it just be hydrogen? And the answer is, it's because it's more fun this way. It's not having fun. Sometimes we think, you know, this isn't much fun. I'm having a miserable time. But you have to remember that it's because you're taking the joke seriously. You're playing the joke on yourself. Your divinity, it's your life. You made up your life. Gururaj once had a wonderful thing. He says, God, you made this ugly face. You take care of it. It's one of my sayings of the Guru.
I love that.
God, you made this ugly face. You take care of it. And actually, that's the correct attitude. You say, God, you made this ridiculous life. Fix it. Do something. God always does something. It may not be something we fully approve of, but God always comes up. Everything always changes. It doesn't stop happening. It's just stuff keeps showing up. Stuff keeps showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm very grateful that everybody comes to these satsangs. To me, this is us being with our beloved Guru and also restoring our faith, because we need it sometimes. We get preoccupied and bored, and we take all the nonsense in the newspapers and the television seriously. It's just, remember he said, fuck the mind. It's just the mind. Stay in contact with the divine. Forget the mind, follow the divine. And you remember, he's our blood brother, meaning he being divinity is our blood brother. He'll always watch over us. All right? Always watch over us. So I'm going to keep trying to do these, but Lorietta's in my life is getting more and more complicated all the time, but I think these are very important, so I want to keep going.
Thank you, Jeff.
And I got a great one from the UK, a satsang for next time. That Kevin, is it Jolly? Kevin Jolie? How do you say his last name? He's been starting to put these sort of excerpts from Gururaj online, and they're great. So he put a great excerpt. And Phil, massively wonderful little things.
Phil is the resource, man.
Oh, I told him, make a book out of these little excerpts that he does.
The thanks goes to Sutria because she's done all the transcribing.
Yeah.
Many, many people. Sutria has devoted her life to this, and this is her life
absolutely
work. And it is, we would not have the Guru like this without the work she did.
Yep.
So, thank you all.
So I would like to make a plug for the summer course right now. Registration will be up online in the next couple days. And it is, if I'm not incorrect, the 40th anniversary of his passing from the body. And it would be lovely to have as many of you that can make it there, and no guilt if you can't.
I think it's the 30th, but no less important.
Yeah.
I would love to go myself. If we could, we would go.
I understand. I absolutely understand. But spread the word. It should be a wonderful course. And we are 2 months out, and I just want to get the energy going. So,
Kenton, I'm going to put you on the spot. If we could figure out a way for that course that I could do a little video thing or something, I would be delighted.
I would love that.
If that can happen, I would feel like I was in touch with my brothers and sisters.
We will make that happen, my friend.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Thank you all.
All right.
Have a wonderful, wonderful life.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful life. Beautiful life. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so thankful for these.